Welcome back to the show. It is your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio, and welcome to the final hour of my show. Okay, but don't worry because I will be here for an entire hour, and I do have a lot of interesting things to share with you. Even though it is the final hour of the show, and even though it is a final edition of the Sunrise for this week. Don't worry because I'll be back again on Monday as well to keep talking to you about everything that is happening in the world, especially things that are related to the lifestyle of to our lifestyle, especially everything that's related to our personal development, our mental health, and even our physical health as well. Okay. So make sure you stay tuned because that's what I do right here on the Sunrise. I share all these amazing tips and even tricks with you on how to be healthy, especially when it comes to being mentally healthy, especially when it comes to being physically healthy, how you can actually be healthy. I share all of that with you right here on the Sunrise, okay? So make sure you stay tuned. I also want to very quickly remind you that you can, in fact, follow us on our social media platforms, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, okay? And if you follow us on those social media platforms, well, you're always going to be able to know about everything that happens, not just here in the United Kingdom, but all over the world as well. So make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you follow us as well because it's definitely going to help you stay updated. It's definitely going to help you, focus on everything that is happening in the world as well. And if you want to be a part of this conversation, you can join me live. All you need to do is just text me on 07852473473. Okay, make sure you join this conversation. Make sure you share your thoughts and your opinions with me on this conversation as well, so make sure you do that. And also, you can download our app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. That's all you need to do. Just go follow the app and, or rather, go download the app. And then you can listen to us from anywhere in the world at any time of the day. So make sure you do that. But right now, let's actually get into this conversation about hope, right? And we'll get into this conversation about why hope might actually be a dangerous thing in the middle of a pandemic. Now, why am I saying that? Obviously, you must be wondering why I'm saying that. And I'll actually explain to you why hope can be a dangerous thing in a pandemic. Now, in a pandemic, when you're hopeful, what you're hopeful for is obviously for the fact that, maybe this pandemic will end soon. So you hope and you hope and you hope, and all of your expectations shatter. All that hope just falls flat on the ground because the pandemic didn't end, right? I mean, look, the reason we were all so hopeful about this year, the reason we were all so excited for this year, was because we assumed that by the end of last year the pandemic would have been over. But the pandemic was not over. The pandemic is still, ongoing. It's still happening, right? We're still in lockdown as well. So when you after all of that hope, when you finally realize that the pandemic is not going to be over for a long time, and even though we hoped that the pandemic would end and we made plans on all of that, we all just had to sort of dash it on the ground because the pandemic didn't end. And what happens then is then you start getting stressed out and anxious and depressed much more than you were before, because now it feels like you're constantly stuck in this state of where you can't get out of anything. You're basically stuck in this state of, how do I put it, you're basically stuck. You can't move, you can't go out or you can't go in, you're stuck and you cannot move, and it almost feels like you're being suffocated with all of the bad things that are happening in the world. The pandemic has obviously caused a lot of stress, has caused a lot of depression and anxiety for a lot of us. And when you have that hope and you imagine that things will get better, and it doesn't get better, then things in fact start getting really, really worse for you. Now, apparently, the fear of happiness, in fact, actually has a name. It's called cherophobia. And having lots of joy and fun, actually, I don't know about you, but when it comes to me, especially, whenever I have a lot of fun and I, enjoy myself a lot, I always think, okay, you know what? Now something bad is going to happen next. And let me know if you strongly agree with this, if you somewhat disagree, whether you don't agree, or um, whether you don't agree or you completely disagree with me, okay? Because I want to know, because I have been in this situation so many times and I still am. especially if I'm enjoying myself today, especially if I'm gonna have so much of fun today, I already know that something bad's going to happen tomorrow. And believe me, it always does. Okay, like for example, if I end up having a really good day today, then tomorrow, my parents will shout at me, my boss will shout at me, I will get shouted at by everyone, and then my day is definitely going to be ruined. Now that has happened to me so many times, and it happened to me this week as well. So even though I think this, and a lot of people think, or a lot of people say that you just think this but it doesn't actually happen. That's not true, because it does actually happen for some people, especially someone like me, because I'm definitely the strongly agree type for this question, which is, does having a lot of fun and joy cause a lot of bad things to happen? Because I definitely agree to that. And I have to say, I'm definitely not one of nature's sunbeams. I am superstitiously inclined to regard happiness with suspicion, absurdly, and I seem to believe that expecting the worst can actually ward it off, especially when I feel like when you're expecting the worst of things, because you're expecting things to be so bad. When things aren't so bad, you're just happy, like, oh, this didn't happen, things didn't turn out to be really bad, so now I have something to be happy about. And I think that's what happens as well. If you're not having a completely bad day, then what's going to happen is, when you start assuming that things are going to get much much bad if you assume that things are going to get much bad tomorrow, and then you wait for things to get really bad and it doesn't, then hey, look, maybe bad things don't happen, because things didn't happen as badly as you expected them to. They didn't happen in a way that was so bad that you basically what I'm trying to say, to put it quite simply, is the fact that, when you expect things to go bad, and you expect the worst of things, and it doesn't work out like that, when it doesn't happen like that, you're going to be grateful and think, oh, the worst thing didn't happen. But things might have been bad, but it wasn't the worst, so you're not going to be sad about it, and you're going to think, hey, things didn't turn out too bad. And if you're actually wired like me, if you're wired this way, it's hard actually not to overlay an ominous gray filter on these idyllic moments that you have. And at the moment, this actually includes hugging your family members, it includes being in a friend's house, or buying the things that you love, because definitely, if you do something to make yourself happy today, then tomorrow something bad is going to happen. And don't you feel that? Because if, for example, if I hug one of my family members today, I would always think, okay, you know what, like someone's going to get sick or something bad is going to happen. And I don't know why we think that. Maybe it's just how there's this theory that says sometimes when you're asleep, your soul sort of goes out of your body, and you sometimes see into the future. Like there are instances you dream what's going to happen in the future, and the next day it happens. Well, we all have had that moments, right? And it feels very deja vu. Unlike Olivia Rodrigo, it does feel very deja vu. So in instances like that, um you tend to think, okay, I saw this happening, so now it's definitely going to happen as well. So while you're enjoying this, your subconscious mind is going to say, oh, you know what, this is actually really really nice. But at the back of your head, there's always going to be that bad fairy, is like in Sleeping Beauty, when there's a bad fairy at her christening that says, you'll pay for it later. Even though you're enjoying yourself right now, you're definitely going to pay for it later. Now, this is actually not a modern cognitive quirk. Okay, this has actually existed, and this has actually been portrayed in paintings as well, because Renaissance memento mori art actually placed a skull or an emptying hourglass alongside the sumptuous flowers, fruit, and worldly possession, and that basically. What that indicated, or what that portrayed, was that the decline and decay at the heart of every good thing. So even though you have a good time, things will get bad. It will eventually get bad. But again, I think the way you have to look at this, or the way you see this, is actually by looking at it in a way where everything comes in waves, right? There are waves when you're happy, there's waves when you're sad, and it's not I think the only consistent thing in life is change, right? Because sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're sad. Nothing is ever permanent except for change. So you must always embrace the fact that change is going to happen. You must embrace the fact that, all these things, all the good things are eventually going to come to an end, but it's important for you to enjoy it at that moment. And that's something I find hard to do as well. I find it very hard to enjoy things that are happening at the moment, because I feel like, things are going to get bad, so I then start focusing on the things that are going to get bad instead of enjoying that moment, instead of being in the present. Okay. And I know it's very ironic of me to come here and tell you, or rather give you tips and say, hey, the best way to deal with this or deal with that is actually to accept yourself, is to be in the moment, is to be this, is to do that. And then I myself don't adhere to those tips that I give y'all. I know it sounds very, very ironic, but sometimes it does happen. Sometimes um, we find it hard to follow our own advice. And I'm not the only one who's been there. You've definitely been there as well. So like I said, it's hard to sometimes follow your own advice, but what's important is we keep trying. We definitely need to keep trying. That we need to keep trying and keep telling ourselves, you know what, don't give up, just keep going. Someday you will get the hang of it, but until then you have to keep going, you have to keep trying, right? So if you have the expectation of this better hereafter, but if you're someone like me, you think this as good, you think that this is as good as it gets, right? And I know it's very unhelpful, it's very self-sabotaging actually, and it's very, it's basically sabotaging yourself rather than helping yourself. It's a whole different coping mechanism altogether. But that's just the way it is. That's just how some people are wired. And we'll talk about whether people like that can actually change. How exactly do we change? And what kind of things do we need to do to make sure that we don't always keep thinking that every time we enjoy something, that something bad is going to happen immediately? Because I know I'm not the only one who's been there. You've definitely been there as well. And it gets weird because sometimes you are like having the best time of your life, and then suddenly you remember, oh, you know what, things are going to go get really bad, and then you wouldn't be able to enjoy it thereafter. So it's important to keep that in mind, and it's important to focus on those as well. But make sure you stay tuned, because I'll be back in a few more minutes to talk to you about all of that after this break.
The valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. What am I saving or investing for? Why am I doing it? When will I need the money? And how much money do I need? Yeah. So that's quite important, because when you're looking at your net worth, you got to start with saying, well, what do I want my net worth to be? So that there's a goal, and then work backwards. How do I get there? And if I can start with £50 or $50 a week, if I save that every week, and you can go online and use calculators online. I don't have to teach you the maths behind it, but you can say, okay, and if I get a 3% return and I put this away for how long will it take to reach my goal? And that's called just this basic cash flow projection calculations. And it's what we use in financial planning all the time. What we say to clients is we say, okay, what is your goal? What is your objective? Where do you want to go to? And we discuss that in a lot of detail and over most of the meeting. And then the rest of it is saying, okay, in your exact circumstances, with your risk profile, with how you feel about investments and pensions and taxes and where you are and who you work with, and your education level or your lack of education, or how involved you want to be. There's a lot of variables that we take into account, and then we say, okay, here's a plan. You start like this, that's great. And then we review it all the time, and we say, okay, we need to increase it, we're on track, we're not, this is what is happening. Because remember, when you're dealing with assets, the valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because You're
Yeah,
always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. So
absolutely.
that's a stroke. Yeah. So there are strategies everywhere from £50 a week up to £100 million, and they're different. Huh? They range differently from everyone, but and from country to country. To be fair, different countries have different tax laws, so different vehicles. But from your point of view, at the sort of normal end, I'm not going to call it the low end because I'm in that boat as well. It's as tax efficient as you can get it. That's where you start. You
Right.
use all the tax efficiencies, and then you step up into different things.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh. So that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Girls, ladies who ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" I mean, hey, you can you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, got me thinking. You want to stand out. Why do you want to stand out though so much, especially with these kind of shirts when you're riding? There must be a purpose behind it, right?
Well, when you say a purpose, Nick, what I do, I wear the shirts, mainly one because they're nice and bright, so they make me visible, especially if I'm riding on the road.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's very important, right? Because you want cars, yeah.
Very important. And also, like, people see me in like calves, and perhaps I shouldn't be saying this on here, I suppose, but in the bar afterwards.
All right.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh. So that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Girls, ladies who ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" I mean, hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, you look like a guy who would do.
You know me too well. You know me too well, Nick.
Welcome back to the show. It is your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise. Now, I'm super excited to be here because it is the final of my show, but I'm also very excited because I get to tell you a lot of interesting information, and I also get to have an amazing conversation with you. So I'm very, very excited to be here. But also, it's Friday, and that means it's the weekend. So that means that's another thing for you to be excited about. Because, like I said, it doesn't matter if you've been stuck in the pandemic, if it doesn't matter if you've been if you've been stuck at home, because during the weekend you get to forget about all your work and you get to just chill and you get to enjoy and sleep much more than you sleep on weekdays. So that is something that is definitely something for you to look forward to. Now, let's get back into the conversation. But before we get back into the conversation, I want to very quickly remind you that you can go follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And that way you can keep yourself updated. And you can also watch a lot of fun, interesting, and, entertaining content for you, okay? Because we definitely, whenever we make all our content, we make sure we keep you in mind. We make sure to talk about things that you love, whether it's science, sports, health, fitness, whatever it is that we talk about, we always keep you in mind. So make sure you go follow our socials, because that way you can always get to know who talks about your favorite things and which show you need to tune into to listen to them talk about what you love the most. So make sure you do that. But also, make sure you're a part of this show. Make sure to text me on 078 and let me know your thoughts and your opinions, your questions, your experiences, whatever it is that you want to share with us. Make sure you do that. And a very, very quick reminder to go download our app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can listen in from anywhere in the world, from any device. So make sure you do that. But right now, let's get back into our conversation where we were talking about our fear of happiness, our fear of enjoying the moment because we feel like something bad is going to happen. Now, I have been thinking about it recently as well, because I was wondering if cherophobia in fact has a cousin, which is basically the fear of optimism. So this is basically when things start to look more positive, especially pandemic wise. People like me, our kind, we find ourselves primed and scanning the horizon for the next disaster, unable to believe things can really get better. Okay, because that's just how our brains work. We always think that no matter what it is, no matter how many good things are inside, there's also another bad thing inside. We just haven't seen it yet, right? So our brains then constantly focus on what exactly could go wrong, and we're on the lookout for things that could go wrong. We're on the lookout to see, okay, what bad thing is going to happen next. And if you're scrolling through social media, you can see animal videos, you can see shouting, and then you can see global catastrophe, and then you'll see another animal video. Okay, so again, even our feeds are made to look that way. You'll see a lot of cute animal videos, you'll see a lot of positive content, and then all of a sudden there will be like a global catastrophe. And what I saw recently was how what I saw recently was obviously a lot of discrimination that was happening, especially in the United States. So whenever I'm on social media and I'm scrolling down my social media, I see a lot of funny videos, I see cute animals, and then all of a sudden there's like some big issue where a lot of people are getting discriminated, where a lot of people's rights are actually being violated. And then I'm thinking to myself, this is why nothing good ever stays for a long time. With everything good, there's always some bad thing. But that could just be me. That could really just be me or people like me. Whereas if you're someone who's always thinking of the positive, if you're thinking of all everything good and beautiful and happy in this world, well, that's good for you. Honestly, I wish I could be like that, and I really am trying, but it is tiring as well. But also it's a bit hard because sometimes it's just hard to always tell yourself that everything's going to be fine, especially we have this climate crisis, our world is dying, there's so many bad things happening, and it's hard to stay positive in the midst of all of that, right? But it's important for us to stay positive. It's important for us to motivate ourselves, our friends, to keep going, to keep telling them, look, we can take certain steps, we can do certain things to actually make this world a much better place. So it's important to not give up. It's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel like bad things are going to happen. That's completely fine. But what is not fine is giving up. Make sure you consistently keep believing in yourself, keep believing in the world, and keep believing that things will eventually get better. So like I said, even when you're on your social media or scrolling on your social media, you tend to see a lot of happy things, then you see like some big problem, and then you see a lot of other happy things. So it kind of gets under the skin of those inclined to see the brighter side. Now, there actually does not seem to be a particular demographic or a political leaning that tends to optimism. Although, if your preferred party is in charge, you're probably less inclined to think that they have made irremediable balls of everything. Okay, so this usually consistently group thinking bubble is in fact unprecedentedly divided on whether or not everything is just terrible, right? Which is basically all my kind of people were constantly divided on whether everything is terrible or not. Okay, so if someone on Instagram actually shares a piece of data or shares some data about the Delta variant or the black fungus and tells, what, we're screwed, then someone else will actually take it as this personal attack, because then they'll start countering them with high rates of vaccination in the United Kingdom and low hospitalization figures. But what we need to keep in mind is, in both of these instances, they're actually, both these opinions they're expressing are true, you know and while they're in this constant fight between who's more right and who is more wrong, because that's what people on the internet do. You're always trying to prove that you're better than them, or you're always trying to prove that you're always right, which is not a cool thing. Because like I said, we all learn, we all experience things differently. So it's always good to accept your mistakes and to apologize for the mistakes that you make, and learn new things and accept new ideas, because that's how people grow. So like I said, someone will say that things are really bad, then someone else will show hospital figures and vaccination rates and say, you know what, it's not that bad. And then the first person will, show much more graphs, and they'll have much more analyzed arguments, and the second person will, angrily recite all the good news all over again, right? So the thing is, like I said, both of these opinions are true. Vaccines are working, but there's obviously a real a cause for all of these concern as well, right? And what we need to understand is, even though they're looking at this from two different viewpoints, they both want the same thing. Okay, we all want everything to be okay, because, of course, we all want things to be okay. And it's like, I feel this fear of optimism, the sense that it would be worse to allow to allow this thing with feathers to unfurl a little in your chest. It could only be crushed, and it might never even fly at all. So that's what it feels like when you are always so doubtful of everything good that happens in your life. Okay, because you constantly feel like, hey, if I do this, things are definitely going to go wrong. Something bad is going to happen, and things are going to get bad. And I know it's easier said than done. I mean, come on, it's very easy for me to come here and tell you about my experience. Or sometimes it might not be easy either, but I don't know, I just find it easy to open up to people. But what we're talking about experiences, what we're talking about, how a lot of us have this fear that things will go wrong. We're scared of being happy because it feels like it's too good to be true. It's very hard to actually come to terms with that and then try to work towards it, especially if it's a habit that you've had for years now. There's that famous saying that says old habits die hard, and that's obviously because old habits do die hard. It's very, very hard for you to get rid of a habit that has been inculcated within you for a really long time. So when you're having all of these habits, when you're constantly thinking that things are probably going to get bad, even though you're enjoying life right now, and sometimes it does happen, it's hard to get rid of it. It's not necessarily something that you can just Google, that you can just go on Pinterest, and if you go on Pinterest and look for tips on how to be happy, it's not something like that. Because look, come on, it's very interesting, or it's very fun to go on Pinterest and to type all of those things, but that doesn't mean that the tips that they give are always going to work, right? For example, a tip like declutter your space, or another way in which you can be happy is to watch a comedy. That's not necessarily happiness, right? That's just enjoyment. That's just being in that moment and distracting yourself. It's not necessarily being happy. So then we have this whole question of how are we going to be happy? How are we going to focus on our happiness? How are we going to push all of these negative thoughts from our mind? How exactly are we going to try and make ourselves look at everything positively? Because there's also this other perception that, if you're always positive, if you're always thinking about all the good things that could happen, that you are being very unrealistic. And to some extent, I do agree with that. If you're always optimistic, if you're always happy, and even you take and say even the most serious thing, you take it as a joke, well, that's not good, and that's not cool at all, because you're not seeing things as you really should see them. You're not seeing things the way that it needs to be seen. Because like I said, when it comes to things like happiness, when it comes to being realistic, when it comes to accepting the things that are happening in the world, we need to be as realistic as possible. And that doesn't mean being always be negative all the time, because there are so many people out there who are so cynical, who are so pessimistic, and who are so negative that they would never ever ever try to be they would never ever try to be happy. And it's almost as if they want to be sad and depressed all the time. It's almost as if they don't want to change the situation, and they always just want to wallow in their sadness and whatnot. But sometimes the truth is, even though that's the case, even though some people might be like that, it can be very, very hard for us to come to terms with the fact that we're struggling with something else, and maybe that is what is causing us to not actually enjoy the moment, to focus on something else, and to think about what other things could go wrong in our life. Okay, Now, make sure you stay tuned because I'll be back in a few more minutes after this break to keep, or rather, to continue talking to you about hope and why we need to try being happy with all the other things in our life and not necessarily focus on, the pandemic. But make sure you stay tuned because I'll be back after this small break.
Again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, you've had one to forget, God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, has how much it's changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no. If that makes sense. They can't
accept rejection, essentially, is all you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you, how did I do? Well, you didn't do very well. And they get upset, and when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young, well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports. And if I had a bad game, for example, I'd say to me, you had one to forget. That's it.
Yeah, that sounds like a smart guy. I mean, yeah, that's the real fact of the matter, yeah.
He'd say to me, you had one to forget. Get over it. And that was it. So I'd dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, you've had one to forget, God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. When it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. How much. A lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because, as you said, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. You know, for the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid, I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
Welcome back to the show. It is your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise, and it's almost the final few minutes of the show. But don't worry, because I still do have a lot of interesting things to left to tell you actually, and I will, leave you in the very capable hands of Salah with the social roundup as soon as I'm done with my show. And she'll be here to talk to you about a lot of interesting social issues, and she will obviously keep you entertained as well, because you need to be aware and you need to be informed and educated about everything that is happening all around the world. Now, if you want to find out more about the kind of content we talk about, well, make sure you go follow our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And also, don't forget to actually download our app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. That means you can listen into our conversation anytime you want at any time of the day. Okay, so make sure you do that. And I would also absolutely love to hear your thoughts and experience, because Relax Radio is all about you. So make sure you text me on 078 and you share your thoughts and experiences with me, because I would absolutely love to hear all of that. But right now, let's actually get back into the conversation we were having, which is basically about how hope is a dangerous thing to have in the middle of a pandemic, and why we need to focus on these other little delights that will keep us happy. Now, every time I say hope is a dangerous thing, I always remember the song by Lana Del Rey where she says, "Hope is a dangerous thing for a woman," and I have to say she's one of my favorite singers out there. So obviously, every time I say the word hope, I remember that song. But anyway, regardless of your gender, hope is a dangerous thing for anyone in the middle of a pandemic. And also there's another thing called too much hope, where you have way too much hope and you think things are going to turn out in the best way possible, but sometimes that isn't actually true. Sometimes things don't actually turn out in the best way possible, and when that doesn't happen, when things don't go your way, you get very disappointed. Sometimes you get depressed and you have anxiety as well when things don't work the way you want them to. But we need to keep in mind, in life there's so many things we don't have control over. There's only a few things we can control, so it's always important to pick and choose what you can control. It's always important to pick and choose what you're willing to fight for, and what exactly it is that you want to change, and what exactly it is that you want to put hope into. Now, getting back into the conversation, it's also very true that there's this optimism bias, right? Hoping for the best is partly responsible for some of our devastating recent misses, which is what I was just saying. Sometimes we hope for the best, and then things go wrong, and then you're disappointed, and you're like, "Oh, I had so many plans. I spent so much of money trying to do this, trying to do that, and things don't didn't happen the way you wanted them to." And sometimes because of that hope you had, and because you hope that it would get better, and you invest in these things like especially say if it was during Christmas and you hope that Christmas would happen, and you invested or you spent a lot of money on getting a lot of things, and then you realized it wasn't happening, and then it felt like it was all a waste. Well, you understand that sometimes hoping for the best is very scary, and it can be very detrimental as well. But obviously I understand too, the protective anger that sort of flares up when you have dared to feel that lightness, then someone suggests that you might be wrong. When things are going so bad, and you want to feel that lightness, you want to experience that lightness because you have hope that things will eventually get better, and then someone just comes and says, "No, that's not going to happen." Like, that is so not that is so demotivating, and that's honestly like the worst thing you could do to someone as well. It's like when you're excited about something and you're talking about something that you're very excited about, and then someone else is just like, "I don't want to hear about it. I'm not interested." And you feel so bad, right? Like, you feel so upset because this is something you genuinely love. This is something you really, really care. about? And then someone's just like, oh, I don't want to hear about your experience because it doesn't mean anything to me. So that's definitely a very terrible feeling. And that is what a lot of people feel as well when you sort of demotivate them and you look down upon that lightness that they have dared to feel. They think, oh, what is your problem? Why are you such a party pooper? Why do you have to ruin everything for everyone? Especially if someone's trying to be positive in these tough times, then why are you trying to ruin it for them? Now, looking ahead is definitely very, very challenging, right? Because wherever you lie on this optimism spectrum, there is no definitive guidance on how exactly or how much hope is appropriate, right? We don't exactly know how to put our hope back into life. We don't know how much of hope is appropriate, especially because there's so many uncertainties with regard to what is happening in the world, right? We don't know if the pandemic, or rather we don't know if coronavirus is going to completely disappear after we get vaccinated, and we when we reduce, or when we control it much better. We don't know if it will come back at like the seasonal flu, and affect us every once in a few years, or we don't know if this is permanent. So it's something hard that we need to live by, that we need to come to terms with as well. And that's just how it is, I guess. Life anyway is hard. It's a huge hard journey, and sometimes things are hard, sometimes things are easy, but what's important is you don't give up. So like I said, we don't know how much of hope we have left. We don't know even if we can put that hope into our future, because we're so scared. We're basically left to read these runes and take it out on each other when our readings differ, which is what is happening right now as well, right? When our thoughts are, or our vision or our perspective of hope is different from someone else's, we all are gonna start an argument, right? That's just how it is right now, because people are so stressed out. People are, they're yearning to break free from this kind of environment we've been stuck in for the past 18 months. So obviously it's important that we sort of try to figure this out with our friends, not just by ourselves with our friends, but obviously with enough social distancing. But it's important that we try to figure it out with each other, and not necessarily, start an argument or start a fight or look down on someone else simply because they have a different idea to what you said, or they view things differently, right? Now, you working on your xerophobia, and you can actually work on it. It's not something that is it's not impossible to let go of it. It's not impossible to be happy and to accept that moment and to be in the moment, because you can do it one day at a time. You can start doing it by doing very, very simple things. Sometimes it can be things like enjoying your cup of coffee, or watching your children, or having fun with your pets. That doesn't mean that every time that you are having fun, that you need to ruin it for yourself, right? You don't have to always think of everything that could go wrong and ruin it for yourself, especially for someone like me who's very good at doing things like that. It's just, I feel like I'm always self sabotaging myself. And it's so ironic, like I said earlier, because I'm here to help you build yourself. I'm here to help you develop yourself. But also at the same time, it's important that we acknowledge that we ourselves have different kind of issues. We ourselves are dealing with different kind of struggles, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, we all just need to make sure we keep working on ourselves to become better people. And that is what this is about as well. So you can start by enjoying the little things, like watching your children play, or having fun with your dogs, or enjoying your morning cup of coffee, or reading a book, or watching a movie. Just we should just start to appreciate and enjoy those little things that we do. Sometimes it can be, buying stuff online. Sometimes it can be that. But as long as you don't overbuy something, or you don't spend way too much time trying to get what you, or trying to order stuff online, as long as you don't do it too much, it's all good. Okay, like I said, it's always good to do things in moderation. It's always good to be aware of what you're doing as well. Now it's obviously hard to subtly start being positive, and it's hard to suddenly start accepting and enjoying the fact that you deserve some goodness in your life, that you deserve some happiness in your life, right? But it's important that we keep doing that, because optimism is in fact hard to cultivate, because you never know what lies ahead. And especially right now at this point of time, we actually have no idea about what lies ahead. But I hope we can all build this baseline of optimism by tracking these specks of delight and realizing how many of them are in fact there in a day, a week, or a year. Because there are so many different things we can be grateful about. There's so many different things that we can be happy about. It's just we need to start realizing them. We need to start looking at them much, much more than we're looking at them now. We should stop being so absorbed in our sadness, or we should stop focusing on all the negative things in life and just start looking at things in a bit in a way that is a bit more brighter, and in a way that will help all of us, okay? Because what I'm trying to say is that I'm not saying everything is fine, because it's not. Nothing will ever be fine. Like, everything won't be fine, like, ever. When one thing is fine, something won't be. But the thing is, we just need to make sure that we enjoy what we're doing, and that wherever we are heading may have enough good in it for us to be for it to be worth looking forward to, so we can look forward to it and we can enjoy it, and we can enjoy our lives as well, instead of always being so pressed on being so pressed on finding the negative things in life and thinking of all the ways in which your life could go wrong, okay? And that is important advice as well. Make sure you apply it to your life, and I will also make sure that I apply it to my life as well. Hard to take my own advice, but I will try it, and we will all get through this together, okay? Well, it's time for me to actually head out of here and make way for Salah with the social roundup, and she will keep you company all the way until 12. She will keep you company all the way until 12, so make sure you stay tuned. But I will catch you again on Monday, and I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope you have a good